I lay here in my dingy room, the smell of stale cigarette smoke permeating in the air, several empty cans of cola on the floor. The only light comes from the dim city lamps barely illuminating the night sky, casting but a shadow upon my room. I take a sip of my bedside whiskey, the burn in my throat providing a brief moment of clarity in this murky world I find myself in. I've seen it all, the cheating spouses, the embezzling corporations, the murderers. It's all in a day's work for a PI like myself. But this latest case, it's got me twisted up inside. I had just poured myself this drink, trying to relax after a long day of dealing with scumbags when I hear something slide under my door. I walked over and picked up the note. My curiosity piqued. The note was short and to the point. Find Craig Bernasconi, it read. No name, no contact information, just those 3 words. I couldn't help but feel a chill run down my spine. I've been in this business long enough to know that when something seems too easy, it usually means trouble. But I couldn't resist the mystery of it all. Who was Craig Bernasconi, and why did someone want me to find him? I spent all night searching through databases and directories, trying to find any trace of this man, and finally, I found an address. I followed the lead, hoping it would lead me to some answers, but when I arrived at the address, my gut told me something was wrong. The door was slightly ajar, and the air was heavy with the stench of death. I hesitated for a moment, then pushed the door open and stepped inside, and there he was, lying on the floor in a pool of blood. Craig Bernasconi, the man I had been searching for, was dead. I knew then that I had stumbled into something much bigger than I had anticipated. My mind raced as I tried to piece together what happened. Who could have done this? Why was I led here? Was this a warning? A message to stay out of things that weren't my business? I took a deep breath and pulled out my notebook. I had to document everything, every detail. It was my job to find out what happened to Craig Bernasconi, even if it would put me in danger. I spent the next few hours at the scene, taking photos, collecting evidence. It was like every piece of the puzzle was another blow to my gut. The more I saw, the more I realized how little I knew. My mind was in turmoil. I knew I had to find out who was responsible for this, and I knew it wouldn't be easy, but as a private investigator, it was my job to see things through to the end, even if that meant risking everything. After a thorough investigation, I found some prints that didn't belong to Craig at the scene of the crime. That was my first breakthrough. It meant that someone else had been there, someone who could have been responsible for Craig's murder. I searched through every database, every contact, every source I had, trying to find any information on these prints, and finally, I found a phone number that had called Craig just before the murder. Using an old address book, I traced the number back to a woman named Bianca. I had never heard of her before, but I knew I had to talk to her. She was my best lead yet. I arrived at her apartment, my heart racing. This was it, the moment of truth. I knocked on the door, and after a few moments, it opened. She was beautiful, with long red hair and piercing green eyes, but there was something about her that made my skin crawl. I knew she was trouble. She refused to tell me her name, and at first she denied knowing anything about it. But when I pressed her, she finally told me that she met with him. 10 minutes after his death, she shut the door in my face. My gut was telling me this was bad, so I did what any rational by-the-book detective would do. I broke in and fucking charged in and beat the shit out of her. I handcuffed her, knowing I had to act fast. Cops were going to be here any minute. Photo ID, matching fingerprints. It wasn't enough, but my time in the demo was limited. When the cops showed, I screamed like a little girl and sprinted all the way to City Hall, turned in the case. They booked her moments later. Case closed. Now, I've seen my fair share of gruesome crime scenes over the years, but this one was different. The air was thick with the smell of death. The blood on the wall seemed to mock me, taunting me with its message. Promote me. Who could have done this, and why? Lorraine Tatum was lying there, lifeless, her once beautiful face now twisted in a look of horror. She was a rising star in the advertising world, and it looked like someone had cut her career short. As I stood there, staring at her, I couldn't help but feel a sense of frustration. This was the one case that would get away from me, the one that would haunt me for the rest of my life. I could hear the sound of sirens in the distance, and I knew that the police would be arriving soon, but I didn't want to leave. I wanted to stay there, to try and figure out who had done this. Maybe there was something I had missed, some clue that could lead me to the killer. As I looked around the room, I noticed a photo on the wall. It was a picture of Lorraine smiling and happy, her arm around a man I didn't recognize. I wondered if he had something to do with this. Maybe he was just jealous of her success, or maybe there was something more sinister going on. But as I continued to investigate, it became clear this was no simple case. There were too many suspects, too many motives. It was just like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube that had been thrown into a blender. And no matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't seem to put the pieces together. In the end, the case went cold. The demo was over, the killer was never caught, and Lorraine's death remained a mystery. But I never forgot about her, and every time I saw the words "promote me," I was reminded of the one case that got away. And that was Shadows of Doubt. It's a really cool game that's kind of flown under the radar. It's been on my wish list for a few years, and I had the great opportunity to play the 90-minute demo. I recommend keep an eye on this game. It is the most in-depth detective game I've ever seen. If you are a Noir fan, this is the thing for you. Seriously. All right, thank you for watching, and have a good one. Thank you.